The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports. You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks.
Number one takeaway from the spring game. This Oregon roster is really coming together. I mean, the way they've recruited in the last couple cycles, at some level, sure, you should expect this because Oregon's recruited really well. But my biggest takeaway, other than, it was great to watch this new version of the Oregon team. It was great to see the awesome crowd at Autzen. Great job, everybody getting there, over 40,000 strong. I love seeing all of that. The competitive depth that Oregon has at a lot of different spots, I think is phenomenal. There are not a lot of positions. I don't know if there are really any, maybe tight end, where I don't feel like Oregon is 3 to 4 deep with guys who look like plus players, who are capable this year or in the coming years to be all conference caliber players, to be NFL draft selections. Like this is a roster that is young, inexperienced in some ways, but boy, they look the part physically, standing on the field. They look the part flying around, and I thought the game was pretty well balanced. You had the defense make some big plays. You had the offenses make some big plays. And I think that's just reflective of where this roster is at. They split these teams up not into ones and twos, but into the Fighting Ducks and the Combat Ducks. And, one team gets to win 24-20, but I walked away going, that felt like a pretty evenly matched game. It felt like there were reps won by one side in a position group and then reps won by another side in a position group. And that's a great thing. That's a great thing because that means that the talent is developing, that it is coming along, that young guys that are going to have to play key roles for this football team this fall look like they're really prepared to do so. And that I think that was awesome. It was really, really great. I think the only spot maybe, I could say probably, where I don't feel like the depth is as strong as some other spots is tight end. We didn't see a ton of Jamari Johnson. He lost a one-on-one rep in the end zone to Trey McNutt. Vander Plug had a couple of really nice catches, the true freshman. We didn't see Roger Saliapaga out there, I don't believe, but I certainly think that he's an intriguing player himself as a converted wide receiver, but coming off an injury from last year, he wasn't the only Duck that was banged up and didn't play in this game. But, Vander Plug also from a blocking standpoint might have a little bit of a ways to go. I think that's the only group that I didn't see multiple high-end level guys or plays being made throughout the course of the day. So that was big takeaway number one. Big takeaway number two. Holy smokes, the quarterbacks looked awesome. They all looked awesome. I mean, I'll just talk about the guys that actually have a chance. Brock Thomas made a great throw down the field too. I mean, he did a great high school career, so I wasn't that surprised. But let's keep it to the guys that we know are going to be a factor now and in the future. That's Dante Moore, Austin Novosad, Luke Moga, Achilles Smith Jr. How much happier could you feel about the quarterbacks coming out of this game? Ask yourself that question. If you watch the whole thing, which you should, if you haven't, go to Big Ten Plus and watch the whole thing back. And tell me how you could feel better about the quarterbacks. I didn't see any disastrous reads. I saw a lot of really good reads. I saw a lot of high-level throws. Achilles Smith Jr. looked awesome as a true freshman in his first spring game. DeCorian Moore looked really good. I was really, really encouraged by so many things. But the development of Luke Moga might have been the biggest takeaway of all. I mean, this is night and day from what I have been told, from what we had seen, what he was coming out of high school. The progression here was staggering to me. Luke Moga looked better in that spring game than Ty Thompson ever did in a spring game. And Ty Thompson had some moments. But Moga looked like a completely different player in the pocket. And he is a freak athlete, man. This is not hyperbole. See how excited I am talking about the quarterbacks? I'm stumbling over my words. This is not hyperbole. Luke Moga is the best athlete at the quarterback position Oregon has had since Marcus Mariota. There was a run where he pulled it on an RPO, didn't force it because the defense took his reads away, and he just sprinted around the edge, and I think it was a first down carry. Like, he is so fast. He is so fast. But the question was, hey, is he going to develop as a passer? Is he going to progress? Because he was raw in high school. The early reports from practice, he's got a ways to go. Boy, didn't look like it there. He was throwing dimes all over the field. Dante Moore, Austin Novosad were both about what I expected, which is good, by the way. And Achilles Smith Jr. didn't look like a true freshman playing in, the biggest moment of his young college career. Didn't look like it to me. Looked like a guy that was ready to go. He was elusive. He threw the ball down the field. I was so blown away in some respect with those two guys. And then Dante Moore and Austin Novosad, they look good. I thought they both looked good. So the competitive depth at quarterback, someone pointed out to me a while back when I was asking, when does a third string quarterback come into play? Ohio State 2014. All right. Someone pointed out that Masoli at one point was a fifth string quarterback. I think that's right. He was pretty low on the depth chart. I think Justin Roper was maybe the fifth guy. I don't know. But that's the last time Oregon went that deep into the depth chart to find a starting quarterback. But those guys all looked really, really sharp to me. I was impressed. So that was big takeaway number 2. Big takeaway number 3. I loved the trench play. Loved the trench play. Going back to what I said earlier about the competitive depth, I felt like there were stretches where the defensive line certainly took over. And if you look at the stats in this game, the defensive line dominated. I don't think it was quite that dominated by the defensive line. I give the advantage to that group, which is what I expect. Offensive lines are at a severe disadvantage in this sort of spring game format because you have guys playing together. I think the closest unit to a starting 5 that I saw out there was a Janoris Wilson, Isaiah World, Poncho, Matthew Bedford, Kavika Rogers. That could be a 5 that sees the field at some point this year. But overall, is that the first 5? No. So that makes it tougher to go up against a defensive line that is just stacked with talent all over the place. But I thought the trench play was really good. There were running lanes created. There were running plays that were stopped by the defensive line. There was pressure on the quarterback. Then there was time to throw. I thought it was incredibly balanced. And I didn't think it was because neither side is going to be any good. I thought it's because both sides have the ability to be really good. The highest grade I gave out for a position group going into this defense or going into this spring game was the defensive line, and it's an A-. And I don't think, I'll just give you a peek ahead at a future segment here on the show, I'm not going to be coming off of that. I might even be raising that up. The defensive line, the way that Oregon recruited that position group in the first couple of cycles, it's paying off right here, right now, because there are a lot of young guys that are ready to contribute, and man, they looked really, really good. But the offensive line also gave the quarterbacks chances to take shots down the field, also opened up running lanes so the backs could showcase what they can do. So those are my 3 biggest takeaways. The competitive depth across the board, except maybe at tight end. All 4 of the quarterbacks I thought looked great. And the line of scrimmage, I think, has a chance to be a strength again for this Oregon team on both sides of the ball, as it was a year ago, particularly along that defensive line. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, all that good stuff. Still so much more to get to. I can't wait for this week of shows. I'm really excited. I might sit down. I'm not going to. It's late at night. But I might sit down and just do an entire week of shows right now. I could. There's so much to discuss, but that's what the rest of the week is for.
Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Halo as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. No, seriously, pair a controller or 4 to the Fire TV 4K stick and play your favorite Xbox games anywhere. If you're a hardened gamer and want to have your PlayStation, Nintendo Switch, and Xbox too, then This is for you. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On. All one word, Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, Fire TV Cube 3rd generation.
Spring games in the books, and let's just say this Iowa passing offense might finally have some bite.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes.
We begin with what we saw on Saturday at Kinnick Stadium as Iowa opened it up and an ability to see the guys one time here during the spring. Now, of course, we would love to be able to see a little bit more of practice and have those kind of opportunities, but a lot of takeaways to get through and a lot of things to digest here for this Iowa football team. As I talked about, you start at the top, and I know, and I get it, and I know there's plenty of you out there that are not going to believe that this Iowa offense, and specifically this Iowa passing game, you're not going to believe it is different until you actually see it in a game. Completely understand. And if you're somebody that needs that evidence, you're just not going to go on a hope and a prayer and maybe a little bit of practice. If that's not enough for you, I can't talk you off that ledge. I completely get it. In a lot of instances, I'm right there with you. You get burned so many times throughout the course of it. As a fan, you get set up for failure. You're loosey with the football, and Charlie Brown comes running up again, and it gets pulled away. We've been there as fans. We completely understand why many of you are that way. And like I said, I'm that way for many things, but just talking to more people involved, just the glimpses from Saturday, people that know football, that aren't just going to give you sunshine when it's not there, have continued to say that this is different. What we're seeing offensively and in the passing game, it is different than what we've gone through. And Tim Lester has shown an ability in year number one of making great improvements and being able to do it, not being able to throw the football. You look at the quarterback room and the guys that we saw Saturday and what you saw from Hank Brown, and definitely a live arm. Good body control, good athleticism. 6'4", he can sling it. There were shaky moments, no doubt. Jackson Stratton, the guy that we saw come in there, basically hair on fire against UCLA, and because of injuries, because of other circumstances, him being thrust into the mix, a guy that they just pulled off the scrap heap, basically. It got him to walk on, thinking that he was going to be your 4th, 5th, 6th quarterback, and he ends up playing. I'm played a couple times for you in big moments. And seeing that guy that we saw last year, that just at times was overwhelmed, to what we saw in this practice. I think that says a lot. Now, who's going to win the backup role? Who's going to be the backup after Mark Gronowski? Is it going to be Stratton or is it going to be Hank Brown? Too early to tell. But just seeing those kind of improvements, I think gets you excited. It gets you excited thinking about what Hank Brown's going to look like when we get to September and the start of the season, because you look at just the raw material that you're working with, that's a lot. And of course, Mark Gronowski, ahead of schedule, now throwing the football. A week ago, he was throwing a Nerf football around, now throwing a real football, coming back off that shoulder surgery. Guy that's thrown for over 10,000 yards in his career, 100 touchdowns passing, the physicality that he plays with, and a guy that fits. Not false bravado, but a real leader. Not a fake one, a real leader. And a guy that you're going to go to battle with. That's what Iowa has in Mark Gronowski. But the guys that were there, the guys that were able to play, are slinging it and making plays. Go back to the last time we had a glimpse, last August, and just how hideous it was with Cade McNamara trying to figure things out. It was awful. It was brutal. Well, he's not there anymore. He's at East Tennessee. And this group of quarterbacks looked immensely better than he did in that open practice before the beginning of last year. Tim Lester's teaching, but he's also getting his guys. He's getting guys that he knows can work with their system. And it goes hand in hand with a wide receiver group that is deep. Doesn't have top-end talent. Doesn't have guys that are elite playmakers. No. However, the depth that they have built at the wide receiver spot in a game where you don't see Jacob Gill. We don't. Dependable, solid, trusty wide receiver in Jacob Gill. But not just him. Reese Vanderzee, before the injuries hit last year, how good he is. Now we see Caden Weegan. And I can't remember where I heard this. Something that popped up last week. I don't remember if it was in a conversation or just reading it somewhere. And apologies if it was something that somebody had come up with source material. But I just remember, in order to get Weegan back, they kind of had to talk him into, we're going to use you, not just as a returner, not just run a jet sweep and just run, we're not going to give you the ball. No, we're actually going to get you involved. And you saw that in the practice. You saw them doing different things to get him involved. And remember, they're doing all these things. And again, it's not to say that it was perfect, because of course it wasn't. But for some of the dregs of spring practices and August practices, the open practices that we've seen in the past, and just how absolutely putrid, just hideous the offenses looked, this was a breath of fresh air. This was different than what we're used to. And they did it basically missing 4 out of their 5 starters, at least the spots that you anticipate they're going to be starting this year on the offensive line. Jennings Dunker, out. Logan Jones, sitting out. You had Pieper in there. We'll kind of see going forward what this is going to look like. Bryce George is going to add a little bit of depth to that offensive tackle room as he left tackle. We'll see. Jennings Dunker now coming off this surgery, getting things cleaned up. What's he going to look like in August? And even with that, even with an offensive line with a lot of different faces, they're pretty good. Good things. Defensively, also saw a little bit more, and we'll talk about that a little bit more here throughout the course of the week. Just some opening thoughts and opening statements, and I think the biggest conversation has to be this passing game. We saw the immense improvement last year in the run game. And yes, you don't have Caleb Johnson. I get that. Kamari Moulton, though, very good. Talented guy. Jazz Patterson, number 2, solid. And then what we saw from McNeil. I think everydayers, if you're an everyday listener to Lock On Hawkeyes, my affinity for Brevin Dahl. And Brev, I know it killed him not to be able to be out there dealing with a hamstring injury and had a few other physical ailments that were happening throughout the course of spring. He wants to be out there getting reps. This is an exciting time. Yeah, the schedule's going to be tough. And we're going to talk about that a lot coming up throughout the summer and just how difficult it's going to be for Iowa to get to a mark, to get to a 10-win season. But if you would have told me at the end of last year, in January things wrap up after the Missouri game, that after spring football, I'd be here thinking that there is a path. That's not the most likely. But this team, I believe, is going to be better than the 7.5 win total that FanDuel has. That this team's going to be better than a lot of the pundits think. They're going to be in games and they're going to do it throwing the football at times. What a world. But I think that's the world we're living in right now in Hawkeyeville.
There's nothing like the energy of a live game, whether it's catching a last-minute Major League Baseball showdown or soaking in the excitement of an NBA playoff game. Finding great seats, though, that used to be a challenge until Game Time. With last-minute deals, all-in prices, and the lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Plus, ticket prices actually drop as the beginning of the game gets closer, so you can score amazing seats at a great price. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
The Florida Gators have added to their defensive line in the transfer portal.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators.
Brendan Bett, defensive lineman out of Baylor, 6'5", 300 pounds, will have 3 years of eligibility. And this is a very unique situation, okay? Brendan Bett, he didn't play in 2024, okay? Didn't play in 2024. And it was because of academic issues. Okay. And I'm bringing this up, which I usually don't try to talk about the off-field stuff, but I do think it's very important to acknowledge the details in this situation, where Brendan Bett's mom is the one that kind of brought this up about how people are seeing that he was academically ineligible for the 2024 season and assuming that he's doing bad things, right? Because so many times when you see someone that's academically ineligible, you kind of like your first thought jumps to, wow, he's doing the wrong things, right? Like he's messing around, he's screwing around, he's putting himself in the bad spot, hanging out with the wrong people, doing these things, doing those things. And your mind kind of jumps to that, which is understandable. However, context matters on this show on Locked On Gators. It might not matter on other shows. It might not matter when you're having conversations with whoever you're having conversations with, but it matters on Locked On Gators. And the context here is that Brendan Bett struggled in the classroom and was struggling in the classroom. He went to Baylor and asked them for help. He went to the Baylor staff, whoever it may be, and he said, hey, I'm struggling. I need help. And Brendan Bett and other Baylor players, which is important, didn't get the help that they requested. Okay. And I do think it's important to acknowledge that it's other Baylor players, because this isn't one player that was academically ineligible, one player that was struggling academically that, oh, well, that's his excuse, right? Because I think a lot of people would do that. If it was one kid, yeah, I think a lot of people would go, wow, he's not a hard worker, lazy, whatever you're going to say. But we're talking about multiple players at Baylor dealt with this. This is not a Brendan Bett problem. This is a Baylor Bears problem. Different BB abbreviation, okay? So this is a Baylor problem there. I will say that at Florida, very good tutors. You see how this team pretty consistently grades out. That very good tutors at Florida, so that will hopefully not be an issue there, even if he does struggle academically. Better support system there. Brendan Bett was recruited by Ron Roberts, because if you don't remember, Ron Roberts entering his second year at Florida. And again, that means 2024 was his first season. 2023, he was at Auburn. Prior to that, he was at Baylor. And Ron Roberts was recruiting Brendan Bett to Baylor, but Ron Roberts was gone before Brendan Bett got there. Okay. So they have that relationship, at least, where he hasn't coached him, but he has recruited him, and so he does know him and knows that he can play in the system, wants him for the system. Brendan Bett was also recruited by defensive line coach Gerald Chapman, which is obviously even more important for the Florida Gators, because this isn't just this is no longer just, oh, he was recruited by the defensive lineman. This is by the defensive coordinator. This is no longer, oh yeah, he was recruited by this. He was recruited by both of these guys, multiple years. And what this tells me also is that he went about things the right way, because there's a lot of coaches who players go, oh, you know what? I'm out. I'm good. I'm not going to commit there. So I don't have to tell them. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to do things the right way, which there is a right way and a wrong way to do things. And for Florida, that's not the case with Brendan Bett, because Brendan Bett did things the right way. And I think that that's an indicator of his character. I think that asking for help academically is an indicator of his character, because, again, this is something where easily he could have just been like, hey, you know what? I'm not going to try that hard. I'm not. I'm going to try to do whatever I'm going to try to just go around. I'm not going to ask for help. It's important to ask for help, and that he did that. Okay. And so that's important. It's important that he went about recruiting the right way, because he was being recruited by Ron Roberts and Gerald Chapman. He chose the school that Ron Roberts was recruiting him to. And Gerald Chapman still, a couple years later, still wants him. And to me, that says he did things the right way. He didn't burn bridges. And so I do think that the character is important here. That's the thing that we've always talked about with Florida. And there's a lot of people who are going to go, I don't care about the character. I just want talent. I think you're getting both with Brendan Bett. I do. Again, I view him as he's someone that got experience because in 2023, he played consistently as a freshman. When he was a freshman, he played consistently. Okay. So he played consistently, started one game, played consistently as a freshman with Baylor in 2023. Again, 2024, academically ineligible, but again, also, he played against LIU, so he's got a little inside scoop on him when Florida plays them to open the season this year. But Brendan Bett played in a very similar defense because although Ron Roberts left, still very similar defense with Dave Aranda, who is a Ron Roberts disciple of sorts. So you still got that. He's someone that has experience as a freshman. Still has 3 years of eligibility, so he's going to be a multi-year addition. And again, an important thing, Gerald Chapman wants him. Okay? So Brendan Bett, he doesn't fit our usual criteria, which is he's got no more than 1 year in college, or 1 year, 1 year in college. So he's got to be at worst true sophomore, redshirt freshman. He's not. Or proven production last year. He doesn't fit that criteria. But he fits a new important criteria that overrides that criteria on the defensive line. Okay? This is the criteria that Gerald Chapman gets the nod. Okay? It doesn't have to matter if I like the player, which I do. I do like his potential. I want to make that clear. I think he's going to be a depth piece this year and then potentially a large role next year. So it doesn't matter about what I even think of the talent. It's Gerald Chapman wants him on the defensive line. And I've said this before with players that I wasn't sold on, where I've said, hey, you know what? I might not be sold on this person, but if Gerald Chapman wants you, works for me. Because it's honestly as simple as that for me. Gerald Chapman has earned that with his recruiting and his development. So Gerald Chapman has earned that nod where he overrides if I think a player is worth it or not. And I think that's fair that he overrides that because he does deserve that. And Brendan Bett is here. And now he's a Florida Gator. And he's here to work. And I do believe in his ceiling. I believe in Gerald Chapman's ability to develop him. And I believe in his fit with the defense. And so I'm looking forward to Brendan Bett's addition.